All right, everybody, welcome to RMS Brown Bag training for April. And today we're going to be discussing submittals and transmittals. Anyway, I'm going to pass it over to the trainer and note that they'll have some question sections and things like that. So feel free to type into the chat different questions that you may have, and hopefully we can answer them. If not, we can look into it more and help you get a response.
Before we get started, the chat's been a real helpful tool. If most of you have on the bottom left-hand corner, other left, it's on the right side, the three ellipsis dots. If you click on that, and if you put your questions in the Q&A section, that's a better means for us recording and socializing the Q&As after the training's done so everyone can see what was going on. So we would prefer you use that. And if anybody has any problems accessing it, we'll stall for a minute and speak up, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Phil. I'm with the RMS team. And as mentioned before, this is the April 2022 Brown Bag RMS training session. I'm glad you joined us today. Again, if you have any questions, you can type them in the Q&A portion of the chat, and there's a team that will address your questions as you put them in. Or if you want to hold off to the end of the presentation, we'll have time then to unmute everybody and allow you to audibly ask any questions that you have. Okay, so this training is on submittals and transmittals. So we're going to cover the steps needed to enter information for submittals and submission of transmittals. And just a reminder, this training is not meant to convey guidance on best practices, business processes, policies, or regulations that govern contract administration or quality assurance actions. And as always, check with your district for any deviations from this presentation. Okay, so submittals are required by the contract to regulate the timely flow of materials to be incorporated into work. They are necessary to demonstrate that the proposed materials are compliant with the contract. All required submittals must be provided by the contractor in time to allow for the review, approval, procurement, delivery, and performance of the preparatory phase inspection. Submittals are indispensable in ensuring and controlling construction quality and must be given the attention required. So for additional information, we've got a link there that will take you to the contractor submittal procedures. Okay, so typically for design, bid, build method of delivery, you've got two different types of submittals. There's the government approved submittals, and then the FIO, which stands for information only submittals. So again, I won't read the lengthy description. You can look at that at your leisure. Now, for design build method of delivery, there are actually 5 submittal classifications. There's the designer of record approved submittals. There are the conformance review submittals. There are the government approved submittals. There are the designer of record approval and conformance review submittals, the designer of record and government approval submittals, and lastly, the FIO, or the for information only submittals. So again, we're going to post a link in the chat so that you can access this presentation at your leisure, and you can read the minutia and details at your leisure. Okay, so for typical submittals are categorized into the following submittal identifications. So for the next 3 slides, we're going to be showing you the typical submittal identifications and a brief description of each. These submittal IDs fall into 3 categories. You have your pre-construction, you have your construction, and your post-construction or closeout. Now, in summary, the SDO1 submittals are for pre-construction. SDO2 SD02 through SD10 are submittals used during construction, and SD11 are submittals that are used for post-construction or closeout. And again, you can read these descriptions and their respective examples when you get the opportunity. So these are 5 through 8, and these are 9 through 11. Okay, so when you go to the contracts menu and click on the submittals tab, you'll see that you'll have 4 modules available to you. First off is the specifications section module. This is where users add or view the list of specification sections required for the contract. The Submittal Register module is the Submittal Register used to show all submittal items that the government and contractor agreed to use during the contract. This is where you can see each individual item's status, its history, and its due dates in a quick glance. The Transmittal Log module, this is where the transmittals are sent by the contractor and are received by the government. And it also shows a record of all the submittal items transmitted to the government by the contractor. And the last is the Submittal Assignments module. And this allows the government to quickly assign or change reviewers, set review periods or activities for multiple submittal items at once. And just a reminder, the first 2 sections must be populated before attempting to send the first transmittal in the transmittal log. Okay, so let's go to the first module, the specification section. So as stated earlier, the first step to sending transmittals is to populate which specification sections will be required for this contract. The only exception is when using the import submittals option, which we'll discuss later in this training. Now, normally the contractor is the one who is going to be adding the specification section and the submittal register into RMS. However, there may be times that the government may need to make manual adjustments to these areas. Now, in RMS, there are 3 ways to add specifications. You can use the master list, which 3 are provided in RMS. You can manually add a specification, or you can import a specs intact. So first, we're going to demonstrate how to manually add or adjust. Okay, so when you open the specification section module for the first time, there will be no information populated as seen on this screen. For your reference, we've given you some details to assist you with pre-populating this area for your reference later. Okay, so first, if you click on the Add button, you'll see that you can add a specification either manually or from a master list. In this case, one of the master list options is showing in the foreground. As you can see, it brings up the lookup table showing all the options for that specific master list. Now, it's important to note, if you want to choose more than one from this list, but not all of them, be sure to check the individual checkboxes only. However, if you want to check them all, there is a check all box at the top of the section that you can select. So once you're done selecting, be sure to click on the OK button at the bottom of the screen. Okay, if the master formats do not have the specification you are looking for, you can customize it by using the manually add new section option. If chosen, this option will prompt you to enter the specification number and the name. Be sure that the section number is correct before you click on the OK button, because once you click the OK button, you will not be able to edit it. Okay, when you're done, click on the OK button when you're finished. Okay, you will then see the specification section edit view screen where you can edit the name. Make any changes and click on the back button to save your changes and return to the specification section data grid. If you need to edit the name of the specification that has already been created, you can. Just double click on the specification to bring up the edit view, edit the name, and then hit the back button to save your changes. It is recommended that you consult your district's policies about entering manual submittals. Okay, the next step in preparing to send transmittals is setting up the submittal register. As stated earlier, this is also where you can quickly see a summary of each submittal item and make changes to the submittal items that have already been entered. As a reminder, it's usually the contractor's responsibility to enter the submittal register items. Again, there are two ways in which you can enter the submittal register, either manually or via our import submittals tool, which we'll discuss later in this training. Okay, next we're going to show you how this module is organized and how the government can manually add or edit these items. Okay, so when you're in the submittal register, the first thing you'll see at the top is the sort view options that are available. The bottom will be the data grid or list of all submittal items already added to the contract. Starting from the left side of the screen, you can view specific registers if you have more than one by clicking on the blue register sort tile. It will show you the list of registers available for your specific contract. On the right side of the view, there are a few more sort options to assist you in viewing types of submittals. You can view the items based on when they are due or what status they are in by clicking on the appropriate boxes. These boxes also show how many items are in that specific status. Now, it's important to note that if you use the sort tiles to view different submittal statuses, you'll need to click on the All Items sort tile to restore the data grid view. Okay, so for your information, if you wish to add more than one register, this can be done in the Contract Setup Submittals tab as seen here. Again, please check with your district's policy before trying to add another submittal register. Okay, next we're going to discuss how to manually add a submittal item to the register. As a reminder, this should already have been done and completed by the contractor. So to add a new submittal item, click on the Add button and then select the section for which the submittal item is associated. If you don't see the specification section in this list, you or the contractor will need to go back to the specification section module to add it. Then click on the next button to open the submittal item edit view. Okay, the boxes outlined in red are the ones that are available for users to edit after creation of the submittal item. You can change the description, the required activity, the paragraph, the drawing, the lead and lag times, procurement, and days to review. Note that all of this information can be pre-populated using the import options. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, and should be entered based on contract requirements and district policies. The start date field is a special field that is only editable if your contract is not set up to use the activity start dates. We recommend to use the activity start dates, as this will make submittal item due dates based on the linked activities required to be completed for that submittal item. This way you know the due dates displayed are correct if the activity schedule dates are also correct. If you cannot enter the start date as seen in this view, that means that your contract is set up to use the activity schedule to schedule the due dates for the submittal items. As such, it is highly recommended that you ensure the contractor links an activity to all submittal items that require activities. If you are able to change the date, then you'll need to make sure that a contractor enters all the due dates, and then you will then need to go behind them and verify all of those dates entered were correct and update them if required. This option also means that every time the schedule changes, that these dates will have to be manually changed. So to save time and effort, we recommend using the activity start dates for the submittal item due dates, because they will update the date automatically based on the activity schedule. And we'll show you how to set that up in your contract next. Okay, so in this view, we are under the Administration tab, the Contract Setup module with the Submittals Schedule tab view. Under the list of submittal registers, there is a checkbox that allows you to set your contract up to use the activity schedule for the submittal item due dates. Now remember, checking this box will save you time, but you cannot change the dates in the submittal register if this option is chosen. Okay, so back to the submittal item edit view. It is always best practice to ensure that all submittal items have their classification set as well as their submittal type. When entering the classification, the drop-down menu will give you a lookup field showing the list of classifications to choose from. When entering the submittal type, instead of a drop-down list, you'll click on the blue field, which will bring up a lookup field to choose the appropriate submittal type. If anything is missing from the submittal type lookup field, you'll need to contact your district administrator for guidance in this area. Next, you can set a primary and one or more secondary reviewers for each submittal item. When you click on the primary government reviewer blue box, it will display a lookup menu so you can find the person that you want to assign as reviewer. For adding secondary reviewers, click on the plus icon, and likewise to delete reviewers, click on the X icon. Now note, if the reviewer is the same person as multiple submittal items, then we'd recommend that you enter that all at one time using the Submittal Assignments module. Again, we'll discuss that in upcoming slides. And always remember to click the back button to save your changes. Okay, another way to edit some submittal items is to use the Edit Grid button. As you see here, you can quickly see and edit these fields for a submittal item without opening the Submittal Item Edit view. Click on the Save Changes or Cancel Changes button to return to the Submittal Register Data Grid view. As in most other modules in RMS, you do have the ability to delete incorrect or duplicate items by using the Delete button. The first option that you have will delete the record that is currently selected. So make sure that you don't click on this unless you know the item selected is the one you wish to delete. The second option will allow you to pick and choose more than one record to delete at a time. When using this option, only check the check boxes to select more than one. You can then select or unselect all records, delete the selected records, or cancel the deletion. The last option that you have for deleting is to delete all. RMS will prompt you to ensure that this is really what you want to do, but still proceed with caution as this process cannot be undone. Okay, as stated earlier, the Submittal Assignments module allows you to quickly and easily change a couple different options related to multiple items at the same time. This can be done by using the Update button. You can assign an activity, set the review period, and replace reviewers and offices for multiple items at one time. And of course, you can always set a few individually using the right two columns. When using the Replace Reviewer option, this is the view you will be presented with. So use the blue boxes to bring up the lookup field to choose first who you wish to replace and then who the newer reviewer will be. Then select which items that you want to replace them with. You can choose all not completed, or selected submittal items not completed. And then once you've done that, click Finish to apply the changes. So as you can see, you won't need to know which submittal items the person who is being replaced was originally assigned to. You just need to know the name, and RMS will find which items to update for you. Finally, once everything is set up correctly, you can then go into the Transmittal Log to receive, review, and return or accept transmittals from the contractor. The Transmittal Log is where all the transmittals will be sent from the contractors to the government. By default, when a government user enters into the Transmittal Log module, the first view will be for transmittals in the pending government receipt status. If a contractor has just sent you a transmittal, you must first click on the pending government receipt sort tile to change the view so you can move it into the transmittals in review sort tile view. Move the item, locate the transmittal, and then double click in the field for the date received by government to show the date picker icon. Next, click on the date picker icon to bring up the calendar to choose the appropriate date. The last thing you need to do is to click anywhere outside of that field to move the transmittal item from the pending government receipt status to the transmittal in review. Okay, after acknowledging receipt of the transmittal, go into each transmittal by double clicking on it. The top part will show you the dates associated with the transmittal. Now note, it is not recommended for users to enter the date sent to contractor, as that is done automatically when you complete the transmittal. Under that, you can see which submittal items have been added to this transmittal and if the contractor attached any documents to this area. If attachments were added, you will need to open to review the documents. Once the documents have been reviewed and signed as required, the last step is to click on the Accept Package button to send the documents to PCF. Whether or not the documents are added here is based on district policy and government preference. Now note, the only submittal items from the same specification section with the same classification can be added to a single transmittal. Next, you have the contractor's comments and a location for you to add your comments. There is also a tab for the secondary reviewer's input, which we'll discuss on the next slide. After you have reviewed the top portion, the next step is to open the shared document package to review the documents that have been added there. If everything looks good, click the button to return to this view and apply your QA codes to all submittal items attached to this transmittal. We'll show you how to do this in coming slides. If anything is incorrect, click on the Return to Contractor for Corrections button at the top and communicate with them what needs to be fixed. Okay, to add a secondary reviewer, click on the Secondary Reviewer Remarks tab, click the Add button, and then choose the name of the secondary reviewer. Now, it's important to note that only the secondary reviewer can enter their comments and their completion date. This is to prevent unauthorized changes once the review has been completed. Okay, the review is complete after the comments are added and the dates have been entered. To finish the transmittal, the last step is to add the appropriate QA code and sign the 4025. To add the QA codes to the 4025 and sign it, click on the Apply QA Codes and Sign 4025 button, or if the contractor manually signed their 4025, then you will need to manually sign that as well. So download the 4025 from the contractor's shared document package, open in Adobe to add the QA codes, and then either sign in Adobe or print it and then sign it physically. After you have saved your copy of the fully signed 4025, click on the manually attached signed 4025 button to upload it to RMS. Both buttons will set the date sent to the contractor and complete the transmittal for the government portion. The contractor will still need to acknowledge receipt of that transmittal prior to it being fully complete. But at this point, the government is done with their portion. And as you can see on the slide, we've provided you with a link to our YouTube tutorial video that will walk you through the entire process. Okay, so on this slide, we're going to talk about how to preload all required sections for transmittals. One thing to note, it's recommended to use this option as you can review everything in one shot at the beginning and verify there are no mistakes, which will save you time further into the contract. Now you have import submittals, which uses an Excel template file to bring in submittals as a CSV file. And you also have the import specs and TAC, which uses a file generated from specs and TAC to bring in submittals in a TXT or a text file, which will populate both the specification section and the submittal register at the same time. If you have access to specs and TAC, this is probably the fastest and least fallible method of setting up transmittals. Okay, so first we're going to talk about importing the submittal register. Note, if you use the import submittals, you do not have to enter information in the specification section module, though it is recommended that you do so. Okay, the first step is to download the template by clicking on the Download Template button, fill out the template provided, and then choose how you're going to import the submittals. So you have two options here. You can import by overwriting, or you can merge with information already in the submittal register. Now, if overwriting, ensure that no transmittals have been already sent to the government. If using overwrite, all previous submitted transmittals will be lost. So we recommend to only use overwrite at the beginning of a contract when no transmittals have been sent. Otherwise, choose Merge and click on the Import Submittal Register button. It will then prompt you to locate the template that you have already filled out and saved. Okay, once the import is complete, RMS will display how many items were imported. If the number does not match what you are expecting, we'll discuss what to do on the next slide, or you can see the video on importing submittal registers for troubleshooting. Okay, so as you can see, this is the template downloaded from the previous slide. This template will update submittal sections, item numbers, descriptions, paragraphs, and types. Now note, this template is locked and can only have certain cells populated. Data will be entered, data must be entered on columns A, B, and C, or RMS will not complete the import. It's very important if you have multiple section numbers that are the same, you do not leave them blank. A blank cell will stop the import, causing fewer items to be imported. It is also recommended not to leave any cells in columns B or C blank, as it will be blank when you import it and will not populate the submittal register correctly. Okay, next you're going to pick the type of submittal by putting an X in the type that the item applies to. The same applies to selecting a classification and the receiving office. Okay, the last thing you do before saving the documents is to add the contract number and the delivery order number in the boxes provided at the top of the template. Next, you're going to save it, and before importing it, make sure you close it, otherwise it will not import. And the last thing to know, if you are copying in the register from another file, it is best to ensure that the cell type for all section numbers is general. Otherwise, the imported numbers may not match what is in the submittal. Okay, so here's an example of a message you will receive when you are overwriting and you have existing submittals already submitted to the government. Please note that this option will require a user to identify themselves with their username and password or PIN before continuing. And this action will be logged in the system. So overwriting existing submittals will remove all submittals and transmittals. So this is going to create problems if transmittals have already been sent. Okay, so here's an example of what a specs and TAC file looks like, along with some additional information regarding these files. We have also provided a link to the specs and TAC assistance page if you run into issues or questions regarding specs and TAC. Please note that the RMS Support Center is not authorized, nor do we have any knowledge of systems outside of RMS. If you are using a specs and TAC file, this will import both the register and the specification at the same time. After you have exported specs and TAC file to a text file format, you can then import it into RMS by using the Import Specs and TAC module and clicking on the Add button. This will bring up a Windows dialog box so you can locate the file to be imported. Once you've selected it, then you simply click on the Open button. After you have added the file, RMS will bring up a view similar to an SDEF import showing what is going to be imported. After reviewing the information, you can choose which register to import this by clicking on the blue Import Into box. After choosing the appropriate register, you can choose to either merge into that register or replace that register. So please note, it's recommended to use the merge option instead of overwrite. Regardless of which option you choose, you will be prompted to review your selection, and you'll be able to edit reviewer codes pulled from the specs and TAC file. Okay, next we're going to talk about how each tab and then the specific import screens. So you can see the first tab shows which submittal items will go in the submittal register. The bottom image shows the section tab that corresponds to the specification sections. The reviewers tab, which you see on top, will show the reviewers that will be added to the submittal items. The specs and TAC file tab will show the actual specs and TAC file as it was saved on the computer. If everything looks good, you'll click on the Import Data as Shown button to set assignments and do a final review. Okay, so prior to importing, you can review a few more details and set the assignments. By clicking on the Reviewer Assignments, you will see a staff lookup field to choose the appropriate name. Click OK, and if ready, click the Import Data as Shown button or click the back button to cancel the import. So here's an example of what RMS will display once the specs and TAC file has finished importing. Click the back button to return to the Import Specs and TAC view. Okay, so at this point, this concludes our presentation. I'd like to thank you for attending. At this time, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I only see one question in the Q&A, and it looks like it was already answered. And I don't hear anybody speaking up about any other following up questions. So in light of that, I just wanted to say thank you for attending. Looks like I got a chat pop up. Flip over to that real quick. And I'm not sure exactly how we'll distribute the slides. Do you know how we plan on doing that? There we go. Paul just linked it in the chat. So this is where you can get the slides for this training. If you go to the chat, it should be there. Anybody else had any questions? It looks like had a question with regards to showing how to replace primary reviewer. Do you have that slide available to show that?
Let me see if I can go back to that slide.
The Submittal Assignments.
That one's pretty straightforward, though. It's when you've received the transmittal already or submittal, you go and you there's a section that says the primary reviewer, and you actually just click it, and it'll be a pull-down menu of you can select whoever it is and change it to the appropriate person. Yeah, right there. So if you look in the middle top, the one behind the pop-up picture where it says primary reviewer, when you have Star Wars characters there and you need actual reviewers, you can click on it and select who you want to have review it. So in this example, we're switching it from Lando to Han.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, there was a previous slide that he showed when you are moving, changing project engineer of that contract left, and there's a new one. Instead of going one by one that way, because that's the way I've been doing it, I saw slide that he showed that from that point on, we're going to have a new primary reviewer. That way you don't have to go one by one every time that they submit it. Automatically, you will have the new name there. I think it was before this slide that you're showing.
Yeah, you want to flip back a little bit? I think I know what you're talking about. Keep going.
You guys are talking about the Submittal Assignments, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that module off to the right hand. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So Submittal Assignments module allows you to, you can go in and change a reviewer with another reviewer on all, some, not completed. When we were going to districts doing training in person, we saw government users going into each submittal item and changing the reviewer for every single submittal item. If you go to the Submittal Assignments module, you can mass change reviewers pretty easily. Again, just keep in mind that you're going to be doing this for all submittal items or specific submittal items. So it has a little bit of there's a consequence there if you just go in and change one with the other. I do think the user has to be active. So there was a question about whether or not a former deleted or inactive staff member can be assigned. I think it's supposed to save them. So if they were marked inactive, they'll be saved to what they were assigned, but they can't be assigned from that point forward. You might have to contact the district administrator to inactivate them, at least temporarily. And then, yeah, the Submittal Assignments module is very powerful. You can go in and for tens of thousands of submittal items, just go in and change a reviewer. Saves a ton of time. Hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yeah, how you get to the Submittal assignment again?
Oh, yeah. So, Phil, go ahead and go back one, I think. One more. Okay, no. So go forward. I think it's forward 3. I'm sorry. 2, 3. There you go, right there. So when you go to the submittals, so you open up a contract, right? And then you go to the submittals tile. Inside of the submittals tile, you've got specification sections, submittal register, transmittal log. Submittal assignments is the rightmost module. And that's where you can go in and mass change the review period, the activities, and for you guys, the reviewer.
Okay, because I've been trying to do that on mine, but I'm not able to get to that.
Got it.
Okay, I will try to. Perfect.
Got it. Yeah, it's very powerful. So keep that in mind. By default, it'll change all of them. So make sure you have that radio button on the ones that you want, or the ones that don't have an assigner, or you can just replace one person with the other. So it's pretty powerful. And when you get that module up, it's a little bit complicated, but once you start playing around with it, it becomes second nature.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
All right,
Thank
not
you.
really seeing any other questions that require our response that haven't been already responded to, I guess, in chat. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and listening to the brown bag today. And please feel free to reach out to your district admins, RMS, PMO, or otherwise if you have any questions. Don't forget we have a YouTube channel that does have more in depth for various topics on RMS. Anyway, thank you again.